Hey there everybody, I'm here to take you on a geometric journey, an exploration in what I like to call archetypal geometry. In this video, I'm going to demonstrate what this looks like and talk about some of its fascinating qualities. I'm going to start by drawing a line and placing a few points, and I am totally free to place these elements anywhere. In this type of geometry, there is no measuring, calculating, or quantifying, and it requires no mathematical training or previous knowledge. Our attention is not on the forms we produce, but rather on the creative processes that precede all form. We are simply observing what happens when points and lines interact, letting geometry unfold on its own terms. Like water, we are returning to the source and seeing how it flows in its natural state, before any dams or pipes restrict its movement. This means we have to do it to see it. We have to consciously participate in the formative activity. What we find is that out of this freedom, lawful patterns, exact relationships emerge. Out of randomness and chaos, there appears order and harmony. In this drawing, we can see that the randomly placed points and lines come together to generate a quadrilateral. This will always happen no matter where the elements are located. Archetypal geometry is unlike the geometry most of us have been taught. Euclidean geometry has become standard across the world, and nearly everyone with an education gets trained to think in this way. While it is incredibly useful, it has its limitations. It is an operating system that has been around for over 2,000 years, and it's time for an update. Traditionally, geometry has focused on the properties of made things. We are attending to the making of the things, on the fundamental laws which guide their becoming. Because we are looking at processes in movement, we have to recognize the influence our perspective has on what we see. This drawing appears this way because of where I decided to place my original points and lines, and because of my vantage point. My perspective and the relative position of the elements are inseparable. Archetypal geometry teaches us to see what remains true, independent of perspective, to see what is true across all perspectives, from multiple vantage points. By becoming aware of our perspective, we can free ourselves of its limitations. In this drawing, the formative process is complete. All that remains is to highlight the connections hidden in this network of lines. One way to describe what is happening here is that the corners of the first quadrilateral have been projected into a second quadrilateral, thus making a projective cube. The emergence of this cube shifts our perspective, and what was once lines on a flat plane become an object appearing to float in space. It is the crystallization of an internal harmony, the expression of an exact relationship, one of an infinite number of possible forms it can take. Since we have maintained and kept visible the underlying process, we can now see that this projective cube does not exist in isolation, but is embedded in a larger context, in a whole field of harmoniously woven lines. In fact, we could construct a whole latticework of cubes side by side with this one, all with the same relationship to the generating points, but all different in form. By connecting the 3 points below, we can see that this triangle is defining a plane. This plane and this cube are bound together. And this raises an interesting question. What happens when we make this into a perfectly regular cube? Where does this triangle go? The geometric process I followed in this drawing is an archetypal one. It holds true for every cube. But when we consider the regular cube, we are forced to question some fundamental assumptions of Euclidean geometry. We quite literally have to think outside the box.